Good evening. My name is Minister Johnny Banks Sr. I'm the Executive Director of Anak at Midnight. Once again, it's great to be back in front of the viewing audience. This is our last show for this quarter. Those weeks go by so fast, and we won't have a show next Monday or the following Monday because of the holidays. You know, and as we close, as we get ready to end this year and we go into the new year, we go into with new things happening in our country, new things happening in our state, new things happening, and some of the things, the more that they seem to be new, they just simply the same stuff. And I was just having a conversation right before I came into the studio, and we were talking a little bit about how much the thought process and the feelings that happened around the election of President Obama is somewhat eerily similar to what's happening around the presidency of President-elect Trump as he becomes to take office. How much these things parallel, there's just one is black and one is white. You know, and as we deal with racism in our country, as we deal with the issues of our times, one of the things that we don't seem to be able to talk much about openly, have a collaborative dialogue, have a collective dialogue, have a singular dialogue, is dealing with the question of racism. And the question that I want to pose, can black people be racist? Are whites the only people in America that can be racist? Is there such thing as reverse racism? So callers, if you're there and you're looking at the show, I want you to call and tell me, what do you think? Can black people be racist? Is there such a thing as reverse racism? It's just turned now and it went from one situation, one color to the next. Is it possible that due to the disenfranchisement of a large segment and a large group of African American people, that there's no possibility that people that have been disenfranchised can be racist, can be bigoted? Is that true? Because in many walks and in many circles, when I had this conversation, it's always said that there's no way that you can be racist unless you hold the keys to the kingdom, unless you hold the power to make all the decisions that keeps another person oppressed, that keeps another person down. Can you be a racist? And I don't necessarily agree with that. I just don't. Many people agree that it's the powers that be, that the only ones that can perpetuate this hate, perpetuate this madness called racism on other people. But it's a way to look at it. And I think one of the things that we look at, if we look at just people that are disenfranchised. Now, being red, black, and green to the core, I believe in the fight and the struggle for the African American people, for what we are struggling for what we're struggling about, the little that we are struggling with to overcome so much. But if we just deal with it from a point of possession, from a position of poverty, and from the haves and the have-nots, from those people that are trying to do something and those people that are not, then we can look at this election in a way that says, wow, maybe I didn't think about it like that. But I believe and I feel that the only reason Donald Trump was elected was because of the disenfranchisement of a group of people who finally realized they were disenfranchised, which is poor whites. Once they really had to come to grips with 8 years of being led by an African American president who did some marvelous and great things during his 8 years, but also coming to grips with the fact that they didn't have anything either. And just like they needed Obamacare and the things that the president was trying to put in place to help people who were struggling, to help people that was impoverished, to help people that were disenfranchised, they also had to realize that they fell under that same identity. But the problem was their racist behavior and their entitlement attitudes toward what they should have versus what other people shouldn't have. They went out of their way to put over them somebody that looked like them so they wouldn't feel what it's like to be disenfranchised. And I want to make that point because as an African American person, if I know I'm disenfranchised, my struggle and my fight is to take that up off me, to get that up off my family, to change that in my lifetime for those who are my seed and those people are close to me, and then subsequently spread that out into my own community. So when we start talking about being disenfranchised, do you stay disenfranchised? How do you get that up off of you? And it's so funny, you all, if you would just think back how and this is not my quote. This comes from the Huffington Post and an article they had about Reverend Jeremiah Wright and how his work toward the freedoms of African American people and how his whole theology was around liberation, while his whole theology was around social justice. But it wasn't words he was saying; it was something that he was doing, and it wasn't necessarily about protest. It was about teaching people, you know, because even theologically it said, you don't give a man, you teach him how. So if a man needs to eat, you teach him how to feed himself. You don't give him food, because every day, and you look up when you stop giving him food, he'll be disenfranchised. So that means that things like public aid is not a lifestyle. It's not a lifelong reality. It's something that you use to get to another level in your life. So as we start talking about this, we can see there's many groups in America that struggle with this same thing. So as a person of color, as a black man, as an African American man in America, I do have some responsibilities. And those responsibilities are not to take advantage of people that look just like me as I take nickels and dimes from them to try to better my situation without doing the things that I need to do to help them and teach them how to better theirs. So we find ourselves struggling. All of our institutions that would help a man develop a life that's worth living, to help to develop better opportunities for himself and his family, to better the opportunities for his fellow man, right in his own backyard, right in his own community. Our institutions have failed us. You know, we have a religion that teaches us how to be real pious and how to be real meek and don't complain and don't say nothing, when in fact of the matter is we should have a lot more fire, and coming across every sanctuary, every pulpit on Sundays should be more messages about lifting yourself up, loving who you are, understanding who you are, and how theologically that connects to what you need to be doing for yourself and your family. But we have more issues around tithing than we do around the talent of the people that's sitting out there. We have more issues around tithing than developing the gifts of the people that come every morning, every Sunday morning. So when we start talking about a man's gifts, skills, talents, time, and virtue, we only deal with his finances. We don't deal with his gifts, skills, talent, times, and virtue, because the person who is running the church is supposed to be able to teach people how to develop these skills. Supposed to teach people how to use their time correctly, how to develop the things that they need to be so that they can build the beloved kingdom, so they can be a part of a beloved community right in their own homes, right in their own community. But when that is not foremost, then we find ourselves struggling. Our government institutions are failing because they too are not about justice. We elect people in office who are simply there for self-aggrandizement and doing the things they need to do for themselves, when the fact of the matter is we live in a city and live in a state where we can't even get a budget. But we keep having elections around that stuff because we feel disenfranchised, we feel powerless, when it seems to be that if we do vote, it matters, and if we don't vote, it don't matter. Nothing matters. So that means we have to even take a look at not our political reality, but our government. And theologically it says, and the government will become under the shoulders of him being Jesus, being principled. The principles that were laid down, not the religion that was laid down. So we got so drunk off religion, we don't even use principles. We don't even use principleness. And something is wrong with that. So it permeates into our government. It goes into our business affairs. Where we want to, and everybody prescribes and ascribes to be business owners, but they don't know the four basics: minutes, records, accounts, and receipts. You can't have a business without minutes, records, accounts, and receipts. So if you don't want to be held accountable, you can't have a business. How can you be held accountable when you don't know how to get justice for yourself? How can you be held accountable when you don't understand a theological reality around who you are, what you are, and why you are? When those things happen, then naturally our health breaks down, our homes break down, and our schools break down. So we have a complete thermal breakdown of the human being. We have, the viscosity that we need in our life that keep us going. It is dissipated. It does not even exist. Our struggle, you all, is that we don't understand a lot of stuff. We don't want to know the things that we really need to know in terms of our existence. How do we better our existence? How do we grow and develop the things that we need to run our communities? But more importantly, let's come off the community minute just to run our homes. We are having a struggle, and it's really evident that if you don't like what looks like you, how could you ever love what looks the opposite of you? So if African American people don't like African American people, you gotta hate other folks. So it's time for us to start taking a look at ourselves, look at our institutions, look at the opportunities that are before us, look at the ones that's not before us, and make a decision to do something different. And I know you all, we can do something different, but we're gonna have to start what we need to start, and that's taking a look at ourselves, taking a look at what we've produced for ourselves. What have we produced for our families? What have we produced for others that benefits them and better their lives? Many times we find ourselves being non-productive, or unable to produce. And I was just having a conversation with my son, and we were talking about a 15-year window of saving. What would that look like? And what could you do after that 15th year to develop the things that you need for the rest of your life? Well, one of the things that we do know is that there's been so much talk about how people got this and how people got that and how they do and them and all of this negativity around European people and white folks and what they do. And isn't it amazing that how many times we say it's our turn, we wind up trying to be like them. And if we try to be like them, that means we're going to have to do what they did. And if they killed, maimed, and destroyed to get where they are, then we're going to have to kill, maim, and destroy to get where we want to be. It's time to stop being like that which you hate. If you hate yourself, you need to change yourself. If you hate other people, you need to change that. So we continue to struggle, and we continue to struggle, and we continue to struggle because we won't deal with this one thing. And this one thing is called racism. How do we deal with it? How do we address it? Can we address it? Do we know if we struggle with it personally? How do we reconcile it if we do? Listen, my name is Minister Johnny Banks Sr. I'm with the Knock at Midnight. The Knock at Midnight is located at 400 West 76th Street in Suite 206. Our number there is 773-488-2960. The call-in number here is 312-738-1060. And we need people to call in and respond to the question, is it possible to be a reverse racist? Is it possible to deal with and live in a racist environment, in a racist society, and act like it does not exist? And if any of those questions that you feel like you want to answer, please feel free to call in and talk about that. You know, from an organizational standpoint, A Knock at Midnight has spent a lot of time addressing the educational needs of youth, addressing the educational needs of parents. We believe that a learned, a well thought through process of education can help anybody better equip themselves to be in a position to better their lives, be in a position to change the circumstances by which their lives are in, and in a better position to do better things for themselves and their families if they just get some more information. And there's so much information available, but the primary information, who am I, what am I, why am I? Those things have to be dealt with first. And once we deal with those things, we can deal with the issues of our time. We can deal with the bigotry. We can deal with the hate. We can deal with the racism because we understand who we are, what we are, and why we are. Not the stuff that keeps us caught up. But these things become so true. You know, I spent years picking up on the ideas of others, having people indoctrinate me to their thinking, and going along with it 100%. And it meant absolutely nothing, because once I disengaged from that teaching and that mindset, I really understood not only what was right with it, but also what was wrong with it. It was another form of disenfranchisement. When a person wants you to think the way they would have you to think, but not encourage you to better yourself and to elevate yourself above the thinking. And any time you tried to do that, you were wrong. Something was amiss with you, and you would never be anything because you think differently. And we gotta understand, people. It's okay to think differently. You don't have to think outside the box. Be it, create it, and think this stuff through. Because if we do not think this stuff through, then we will see that it meant nothing to us if somebody walks into a church and murders 9 black people. All of the lives that have been lost around hate, around racism, the senseless shooting of African American youth and adults by police officers, the life of Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, all of the things that we have been thrashing around about that have caused an upheaval in our young people, that is causing upheaval in our elders, that people of great consciousness are now seeing this from a much different perspective. We have to keep on and make this a dialogue so people will listen. Not a monologue, but a dialogue that people will have to at some point confront the hate and the racism that they've been trained in, that has been passed down and handed over to them. And we have to be careful that we don't pass down and hand over hate and racism to our own families and to our own children, and have our own communities locked down with the evil that goes along with it. We have to be able to correct our institutions as we move through these times, as we move through a lot of the things that we are doing. Our viewing audience, it is a shame that we won't correct some stuff. We won't correct what we need to correct. We won't develop the churches. We won't develop government for ourselves. We won't develop businesses, healthcare, home. We won't develop our homes. We're not developing our schools. Our schools are producing third world students who don't realize they're not educated till they get to a college or a higher level of learning and realize they are totally unprepared to be there. You know, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that where Dominic's was in different stores, now we have a whole different brand where you go in the grocery store and get drunk. You can go down to Mariano's and just drink till you're tired. You know, it's a whole different culture, and a certain group of people are locked out of that. A certain group of people are locked out of this reality. You know, we got the people in Maywood who fighting about an Aldi's. The only store in their community is an Aldi's that's trying to move. Because the more poverty, the more self-hate, the more racism, the more you find a lack of. We have to do something about that. As we see things that are built in our communities that signal a change. You know, the whole South Side is about to change due to the soon coming of the Obama Library. All that stuff is going to come, and African American people are not going to benefit from it. All the land around these areas have already been bought. All of it is being taken. We can't afford to buy most of it. So you got European people coming back in and buying up South Shore, buying up Woodlawn, all that the university doesn't own, maybe a few churches have it. That stuff is real. This is not my imagination. And again, we will be not dislocated, so to speak, because we won't be able to locate a job in any of those areas. We won't be able to even afford to live in those areas soon, because the market rate for rent is going to be so high. And again, we ask ourselves, as we look to the black businessmen and the people that look like us that are able to do this, as they come in and buy, are they coming in with hiring black? And we already know the answer. We already know the answer as people come back with the negative superlatives. You know, we are lazy. We don't know. We don't have a business license. All that stuff is a lie. We are ready, but there's this thing about racism, black on black. or the brothers with the construction companies, the brothers with the businesses, the brothers with the materials can't get an opportunity from the people that look just like them. So that if you can't get an opportunity from the people that look just like you, you absolutely can't get an opportunity from one that look opposite of you. We need to stop, look, listen to what's going on in our communities, respond to the sign of the times. There's a strong change coming. Strong change coming. It's bad as listening to the news media about it's so cold outside and you don't go outside to see. You just say, yeah, it's cold, I'm gonna stay in the house. When everything you need and the things that you need to be doing is to at least go out and check it out for yourself. So what I'm saying is, don't just listen to me, check it out for yourself. Well, next time you go to church, see what your church has to offer you besides scripture. Ask your pastor, ask your deacons or whoever's at your church, what can this church do for me? Because these are the things that I need. You can't even get a referral. Go to your statesman, go to your local politician. What can you do for me? The answer is nothing. Go to your community businesses, ask them, what can you do for me? The answer is nothing. Your health care, what can you do to help me maintain my health? Here's some pills. Absolutely nothing. You go home and you ask the people in your home, what can you do for me? Many times the response is, I ain't got nothing, so we can't do nothing. And when you go to the school and ask them for education, you get a certificate of 12 years. Come on, you all. Don't listen to me. Go and ask the questions for yourself. Ask the question for yourself. If you have participated in anything more than 365 days, that thing should be given a dividend to you because you've invested in it. You've been a part of it for years. But can you imagine being part of something for years that doesn't do anything for you? You can't extract anything from it. But it's like being married for years and you've put everything into this marriage. You've done everything right by this marriage, but this marriage hasn't produced anything. You still dreaming about what could be after 5 years. You still hoping what could be after 10 years. You still thinking of the possibilities after 15 years. And after 20 years, you just surrender and say, ain't no sense in me trying to change because it can't get no better. Many of us struggle those same things in our churches, with our government officials and politics. In our businesses, we just keep going to the same stores. And with our health, we don't think it can get any better because we won't do anything different. In our home life, we don't think we can have better in that area. With our education, we have to stop and ask the questions, you all. Is it racism? And is this racism a reverse kind of racism? Have I poured this stuff on myself? Well, I won't do anything to enfranchise myself. I won't do anything to bring me up to a higher level of understanding, a higher level of possibilities, a higher level of finance, just a higher level of education, a higher level of prosperity. I got to do this. Ain't a prayer in the world going to change none of that. None. Ain't an elected official going to change none of that. None. It falls on the individual to do it for themselves. And in order for you to get up, you got to pull yourself up. And if you get yourself up, maybe you can pull up your fellow man. But we keep looking for a hand out and not a hand up. And the only hand that you're going to grab is yours. And I implore you, if you've listened to this show, pull yourself up. It's time for you to change and remove yourself from the vestiges of self-hate, from the vestiges of sin, from the vestiges of poverty, and all these other things that keep you locked down and not being the person that you know you can be. Listen, my name is Minister Johnny Banks Sr. This time goes fast. These shows go just as faster. Sometime in the springtime, I'll be back. But until then, I can be reached at a knock at midnight. We're at 400 West 76th Street in Suite 206. You're always welcome to come by. We can continue our dialogue. We can continue to learn and grow and develop together. I can be reached at 773-488-2960. That's 773-488-2960. And as I close, I would like to say, and it's in the darkest hour, truth and knowledge are the way. Good night. and God bless you.